So I want to ask you, first of all, since it's fresh in your mind, how was Atlanta?
Atlanta was great. It was adventurous.
Yeah.
Uh, it was something that, like, had we dealt with normal circumstance, um, I think our moods would have been different. But like, we all knew that like this was like the last shows of the year, and we haven't played many shows in the last 7 months. So it was like this, like, who cares that it's raining and our gear's getting wet, as long as everything's working.
Hmm.
So it was just like this vibe of, we're going to make this work no matter what, basically.
For sure. Did you have any technical difficulties personally? I know the other guys definitely had some issues, but what were you dealing with personally with the rain?
Uh, no, nothing too bad. Nothing compared to, anything electrical those guys were dealing with. Plus, they were up closer. Um,
Right.
you know, uh, no, nothing. It really only kind of knocked off all the dust that was on my rig from all the festivals that we played.
Yeah, you're kind of like in a spot where you're kind of like shielded from it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I was shielded pretty well. I felt bad for those guys up front though, because you could hear at one point you could hear their pedals and stuff, like the water getting in the circuitry and it like just grinding and burning and stuff. And uh, luckily we got through it. Like, again, the situation like that, we probably would have just canceled the show, right? Like,
hmm.
coming in sideways, uh, you know, stuff like that. But we just knew that we just had to make that work. And I'm glad that we forged through and everything happened great.
For sure. What was going through your mind when they had to call the 2-hour delay? There was the tornado warning. Like what were you thinking?
I mean, it wasn't looking good. Like, that forecast that day was just, you know, with those hurricanes, you never know. Could you get a clear spot for a couple hours, or you could just get like this constant rain for hours.
Hmm.
You just don't know. And when they did the tornado warning and the tornado watch, uh, yeah, I didn't really think the show was going to happen. And we had all those delays. Like, we were on stage ready to go, and then the rain came back, and they had to retarp. And yeah, it was crazy, but glad we got it done.
Yeah, it was a spectacular night. I'm so glad that you guys were just like, we're gonna play, we're gonna do this because
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was incredible. So what are your feelings of doing a drive-in show now that you've done Chicago and Atlanta? What is your opinion of doing a show like that?
Um, the drive-ins are very unique. There's a lot of things that you know you don't realize the advantages of until you actually do it. Like, I mean, from the fans' perspective of just being able to, bring in your own stuff. You're at your car. The show act basically comes to you, right?
Hmm.
And so it's just this really cool feature in that. Obviously, we'd all like to get back to regular shows, but
Hmm.
it's good to know that there's that alternate kind of thing. It's something that maybe when things hopefully get back to normal, still happen. You
Hmm.
know.
Hmm. Yeah, I haven't had the chance to go to one yet, but I'm very interested in trying it out. I've heard just so many advantages to it. The only disadvantage I've heard is not being able to congregate with people, but everybody's super happy about having space and not having to deal with beers being spilled on you. And
Like, yeah, it's true. So, like, say you did something like that where you don't have to social distance. Say we're not in a pandemic, you do something like that. It's more of like a intimate VIP kind of an experience, where you're just like, you have all this space. You're at your car. You bring whatever you want. Yeah, I think in some capacity, I think the drive-ins will still continue after all this.
have you done a drive-in show as a fan yet?
No.
No.
Mhm.
I'm excited to try one out. So how did it feel when you guys played in Chicago? How did it personally feel for you to play in front of an audience again?
Felt great. It
Yeah,
felt like things were like normal for those, you know, well, whatever few hours that we were playing.
Yeah.
So, you know,
That's
that,
how we all felt too.
yeah, it was just, it's great to look out and see people, you know, dancing. And because we had done those streams, we'd done the streams at Jake's and those ones before the shows. And, you know, those were good, but, you know, playing in front of people, it's makes a big difference.
For sure. That's why you chose to do what you
Right.
do, is to play in front of an audience.
Exactly.
So I don't know a lot about you, and you don't do a lot of interviews. So I would love to know a little bit about your history with music. Why did you decide to play drums, and how old were you when you started?
Well, I started really playing drums probably when I was 16. I remember there's like a picture of me like really, really young with a drum set, but I didn't do anything with it. It just banged on it until the drum heads broke and then, you know, tossed it aside. I didn't really get serious about it until I was like 16, but a couple years before that, I was more into sound engineering
Okay.
and like recording, studio recording and stuff. And so I was doing that in high school. I was doing like I was the sound engineer for like the school plays and stuff.
Okay.
And then I eventually bought some like a 4-track like tape recorder and a few mics. And I would have my friends from high school. I met these guys in high school, Mike Miro. They would come over and I would just record them. They would just jam out. I would just record. So, and Mike Miro was one of those guys. And so eventually I just kind of like, I want to start jamming, you know? And so Mike was playing drums, and for me, like percussion just, I don't know, it just sounded really cool. I was listening to like Beastie Boys and they had a lot of percussion in their stuff. I was listening to a lot of classic rock like Santana and all that stuff, that all the percussion. So it just intrigued me, you know, and it was also like a way for me to, you know, jam out with all my friends and stuff. So I was just messing around, and I eventually started taking actual drum set lessons at that time as well. And because I went to this percussion teacher in Chicago, his name's Dede. He's a Brazilian guy, and I went to him and I wanted to take percussion lessons from him, and he told me to go and take drum set lessons for 2 years and then come back to him. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, you know, I just really wanted to focus in on percussion, you know. And so, but I did that. So I took drum set lessons in Northwest Indiana for a couple of years by this guy named Lanny. And then so after the 2 years, I went back to the guy and took a few lessons from him. And then after that, I went to Berklee College of Music for it's like a 2-week percussion festival. I didn't go to college there or anything. It was like a workshop, 2-week workshop, percussion workshop. And you know, it's just a really cool, just full dose into the world of percussion. The who's who of players and everything were there, you know, and I'm like learning from them. And I was just like very much a beginner. It was just really an eye-opening experience for me.
I bet.
So after that, I came home, and you know, right about at that point, I'm like 17 years old, and then I was still jamming with Mike and started jamming with Mike's band, Stomper Bob, Mike and Joel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was still in high school. I would drive to South Bend to play gigs with Stomper Bob on the weekends and stuff. And then eventually, let's see, after that, I graduated, went down to IU in Bloomington. And that was when Mike and Joel quit Stomper Bob and joined with Brennan and Stasek. So I was driving up. So I was down in Bloomington. I'm driving up to South Bend pretty much every weekend, you know, um, which is kind of weird because I was wanting to go to music school at IU, and I'd finally made it to Bloomington. I love Bloomington. I love going to school there, but I was spending every weekend in South Bend. It was kind of like,
Yeah.
wasn't hanging out with any of my friends in Bloomington or anything. I was just going up to South Bend. But that's when I started playing with all the guys, and eventually just moved up to South Bend. And so within, I started playing drums around 16. By 18, I was already in Umphrey's, in just a short amount of time, like just trying to learn so much in the world of percussion, so it was kind of like a big time crash course within those 3 years or so.
Wow. That's incredible. That's a really incredible story.
Yeah, and so like a lot of my learning, like how I learned how to play percussion was just from playing shows, really. Like I took like that workshop I did, that was like, it was like a week and a half. It's like 10 days, I think. And then, a few lessons from the guy in Chicago, but most of my stuff I learned from listening to other music and then just playing and putting things in context during a show. It's like this weird thing I still do today where in this band you're able to you have a lot of freedom to express yourself, right? You have like, you can try certain things, at least I can, in the middle of a show, kind of push your limits of your abilities, where you're almost like you're practicing. You're like, oh, let me try this, Sometimes it doesn't work out, but a lot of times it does. It helps you focus and execute things on the fly,
Absolutely. I think it's a good testament for life too. Sometimes you have
Yeah.
to, execute and do things on the fly.
Mhm.
So who would you say are your most influential drummers or percussionists that, influence you?
Um, Man, there's so many. The guy I took lessons. I took conga lessons from Giovanni Hidalgo, who is like, people call him the GOAT of conga playing. Guy's a freak of nature. He's like Jake on the congas. Uh,
That's a great
so
visual for everyone.
yeah, exactly. So I took some lessons from him, and he was a big influence. But obviously, I'm not on that level. He really inspired me, and he was a really nice guy and very down to earth. But he was just this amazing, amazing guy and musician. And so I learned a lot from him. Listening to Santana, who they incorporated percussion into rock music. So I learned a lot from listening to that. Really the biggest thing that influenced me to start playing percussion was actually the Beastie Boys and all their like instrumental stuff that they did. Had a lot of percussion in it. It was way up in the mix too. You could really hear it clearly. And that's a guy named Eric Bobo who plays for Cypress Hill now. He's in Cypress Hill. He's a percussionist in Cypress Hill. So it was really that stuff that influenced me into really diving in, wanting to play percussion. But like other guys, like fusion guys like Alex Acuna, Carl Perazzo, he's a timbale player, Mark Quinones, he's with the Allman Brothers, now with the Doobie Brothers because Allman Brothers don't play anymore. A lot of those guys, a lot of guys from like the 60s and 70s and stuff. And, there's not much, there's not much percussion in the world of rock. If there is, it's very like simple stuff, there's not much complex percussion parts in rock music, so you really got to dive deep into some of like the fusion stuff and more of the the traditional Afro-Cuban stuff to kind of get ideas and things like that.
So what kind of music now inspires you?
Oh man, I've been listening since this whole lockdown, quarantine, pandemic. I've been listening to a lot of like old soul music, and Spotify's great in like discovering just stuff that like you think you know all the soul music of the 60s and 70s, and then all of a sudden there's like, oh, who's this guy? And, I've never heard of this person before, and I got this huge catalog, and just dive into it. So I've been listening to a lot of that. I grew up, my dad was still is, he grew up in Gary, Indiana, and started this a cappella singing group back in the 70s called Stormy Weather. And then he became a concert promoter and put on shows with acts from the 60s and 70s, 50s and 60s and 70s, doo-wop and oldies music. So I grew up a lot on all like the oldies and soul music and Motown and all that. So
wow.
Yeah.
That's
also
very cool.
I listen to a lot of like hip hop and modern R&B and jazz and classic rock and all kinds of stuff.
So was your dad the reason why you were like interested in music and going into sound engineering and everything?
Man, he never like, I was always around it, but he was never like pushed me into it, or like, I don't know, maybe he even thought like, shit, I hope my son doesn't try and get into music, Like I tell people that all the time, like, don't do it. It's not worth it. It's not. Chances of doing it, it's But I guess you could say that about anything, anything that anybody does. But he didn't really push me into get into music and sound engineering. I guess I got into that because I went to the studio a lot with him, I guess, when he was recording, and it seemed fun to me. But really, it was just meeting, a lot of the guys, my friends in high school that play guitar and bass, and then Mike Mero too, just jamming out with them, because that's really kind of when it started. Because before that, I was, I mentioned I'm very much into hip hop, and back then I was actually at a couple turntables and a bunch of, I still have my all my records from like the early to mid 90s, all hip hop records. And I used to like try and DJ and stuff like that. And I ended up selling all that stuff for drums, so that's when I got into that. So.
Is that what you think you would have chosen to do with your life if you weren't a touring musician?
No, actually I was looking to major in fine arts.
Okay.
That was going to be my major, because growing up I was just really into drawing, and I actually wanted to be a cartoonist, and
really?
It was either like getting into cartoonist or animation of some sort, or graphic design.
Wow.
And but I never got to the point in college where I had to declare my major, because it was right around the time that I moved up to South Bend, so I never went through with that. But that's probably the path that I was going to.
That's very cool. So what is one thing that you never go on tour without?
Oh, my socks hat. Yep.
Nice answer.
It was me everywhere.
Nice. How long have you had it?
Well, I mean, this hat, I've had this hat for maybe a year or so. Every year or so I get a new one.
Get a new one. Rotate them out.
Sweaty and nasty.
How many do you have?
Just one.
Okay. So what is the greatest piece of advice you've gotten about being a touring musician?
Wow. Mm, Greatest piece of advice. Think about this. I guess someone's told me somewhere or another, is don't take it for granted, you know. Don't.
Yeah.
Another one was a guy at place at the Aragon in Chicago. One of the production guys told this story, you know, this band who, you know, came up when they were coming up, they played the Aragon, sold out. They were just big time dicks and assholes, you know, and working with that local crew. So years had gone by. Well, they went to, you know, arenas and stuff like that. Well, then they fell off, and on their way back down, they played the Aragon again, and had to do a show with the same crew, and the crew remembered that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very important when you're a touring musician to always treat local crews, everybody who's helping you, don't treat them like they're less than you, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
everybody's the same. Everybody's doing everything their part to make the show happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's very important as touring musicians. When you're going to every different town, you're working with different kinds of people, you just treat everybody with respect. You know, it's very simple, really. And
Mm-hmm.
those kind of things go a long way, regardless of whether you're a good musician or the crew, local crew, and the venue like your music or whatever. That doesn't matter. It's all about how you treat other people, you know.
Absolutely. And like you said, they could not even like your music, but they would be willing to open their doors for you because
Right.
you were so kind when you were there.
Right. And
And
that helps out. Over the years we've done that, and like, you know, that helps us. We return to some of these venues that, you know, that we love playing, and you know, we're just always welcome back, and everything just flows much better too, you know. Just the
Mhm.
load-ins, and you know, over years we build relationships with these people because we see them every year and stuff. So it's a good way to be.
Absolutely. Good business. So what are a couple of your favorite venues to play?
Well, that's easy. Red Rocks,
Yeah.
Fox Theater, Oakland, Beacon Theater, Milwaukee, what's that? Riverside Theater.
Riverside. Yep.
Um, the Fillmore, Miami. Um, the Anthem in Washington, D.C., one of the better new venues
Mm-hmm.
that we've been to. Hopefully all these places are open when we come back, but
For sure.
let's see. Yeah, there's a lot of good venues out there.
Yeah, for sure. What was one of your favorite sit-ins?
Like people sitting in with us, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, most recently, I'd say Jason Bonham's stuff was very cool.
Yeah, that was very cool.
It's always great to have Josh Redman, come and do shows with us. That's always very seamless and easy with him. He fits in great with what we do. And let's see, what else? What other sit-ins have we had? Many sit-ins.
Many. Very lots.
Yeah.
Who would you like to sit in with you guys? If you could pick somebody, who would you choose?
Man. Well, I've been trying to get my percussion teacher, the guy Giovanni Hidalgo, He lives in Orlando, so I've been trying to get him to sit in.
That would be cool.
Yeah. Man, I was kind of hoping someday we get Eddie Van Halen to sit in with us. But, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
I mean, man, you could go down a long list of people of the past that we wish we could have.
Oh, absolutely.
Because like we say, like when I think of like we were a band in the 60s or 70s, man, be interesting.
I just said that exact same thing about you guys the other day. I was like, if Umphrey's Mcgee was a band in the 1970s, I'm like, they would be superstars.
Mhm.
They would have been touring the world right alongside Genesis and all of those other bands in the 70s. I'm like, if they were just in a different time, it would be completely different.
Yeah, but fortunately, I think we're in this day and age where there's a lot of music made on computers and digitally processed stuff. It's important that there's organic bands out there actually playing music, because there's just not too many. When you look at popular music, there's not a lot of rock bands.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some good rock music, I guess. Not in the literal sense of rock music. It just kind of gets put in that category,
Mm-hmm.
It's not in the forefront like it used to be,
Mm-hmm.
I think though that everything goes in cycles, and I think eventually I'd like to think that it may come back around, like, the whole idea of human beings playing live instruments on stage will be like a big thing. But right now it's all about, not sure what it's all about, but we're just trying to keep that stuff alive,
Yeah. And you're doing a damn fine job, in my opinion.
Thank you.
So can you share a favorite or funniest fan encounter?
I mean, most of the fan encounters that I remember are, fans doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Like there was a guy at Brooklyn, where's Brooklyn Steel?
Yeah.
There's some naked guy like climbing the wall.
I was there.
Yeah. My buddy took a picture of it and sent it to me, and I was like, wow, that happened? I didn't even see it. I missed it all. I seem to miss all this stuff, and I hear about it after the show. I'm like, man, I missed that. I didn't see that. I mean, we've had numerous people like try and jump on stage, and I had a long time ago. This is when I was still tearing down my stuff, loading out all my stuff, and people were leaving, and they hadn't gotten everybody completely out of the venue, and some drunk guy just was just hanging out in front of the stage and just threw a bottle at my head. It just missed, and I think Robbie saw it and just literally just walked over there and kicked the guy in the face. Like, get the hell out of here. Because he was up on stage, this guy was down lower, so he was just like at his foot and just kicks him. And I was like, all right, thanks, Robbie. It's got my back.
Wow. I don't understand why people throw stuff at the band that you paid money to come and see. It blows my mind.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Yeah. That's pretty crazy. So what's something that you've been working on during quarantine?
I've just been trying to practice a lot. I got, fortunately I have a room where I got all my drums, and I've gotten to a point where I got all my basically my exact setup that I have on the road at home. So I've been working on a lot of stuff like that, and been playing a lot of drum set, actually, just learning. I'll just go on Spotify and just fumble around and find songs to just learn, just learn songs, and making beats, making like little 8-bar beats. Just like, just kind of keeping my brain working in music, because, we have these, just big long stretches now of just not playing music. So every day I just have to have some cognitive brain activity of music.
Yeah, you got to keep those muscles sharp, and working the same way.
Yeah. So I think I'm starting to get better at like being more comfortable with drum set. So that's good.
That is very good. That's awesome.
I got probably like, I don't know, 100 or so like beats, just piling up.
Nice. So. That's awesome. And Umphrey's is working on new music, I've heard.
Yeah. We're working on, every time we get together, we've been trying to record stuff. And so we've been working on new stuff, and that's coming along. And so hopefully, we're getting to the point that hopefully we'll have a whole project worth of material in a few months. So
nice. Exactly when we'll need it after the long winter.
Yeah, exactly.
So a lot of musicians are doing online lessons and stuff. Is that something that you think you would consider doing?
Not particularly. No, I just not really into the teaching. I don't think I'm a very good teacher.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if there's some crazy people really wanted to, take lessons and stuff, I'm sure I can do that. But, percussion lessons, probably wouldn't get too many of them, not as much as like, Jake would, and guitars, there's just more people playing guitar.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on the future of live music?
Well, most of the time I have a positive outlook. I think that if once we get through all this, one thing I think is for sure is that it's going to come back. People are we'll get past this tentative mass gathering kind of thing where people aren't sure. That's the whole thing about this. It's like people just aren't sure.
Mm-hmm.
So you just hear it 100 times a day, uncertain times, So
I'm so sick of hearing that.
Yeah, right. So, we'll figure this out. And music's like one of those things where, humans need music, right?
Yeah.
So I think that it's just going to come back stronger, and we'll have more things in place. Things are safer. Things are more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
I think just us as humans will just, we'll take this as an opportunity to figure things out, make things better.
Yeah.
What I mean?
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, it's been a struggle getting through it, but I'm just looking forward to that day, whenever that is, where, we're just back on a tour bus. I'm thinking like, man, when's the next time I'm going to be on a bus,
Yeah.
So I look forward to those days when we're just back together and touring, really.
Yeah. We all feel the same way too. It's a mutual feeling. So I know sometimes people talk about how you don't smile when there's pictures taken of you, which I think is completely untrue. I see you smiling all the time in pictures. So what is something that makes you laugh?
All kinds of things. I mean, I love watching comedy and a lot of YouTube vids. Making me laugh. Ryan Stasek makes me laugh.
Yeah.
He keeps me laughing on the road. Chris Myers too. He's a pretty funny guy.
Yeah. I'm sure between the two of them, I'd be laughing all the time.
Have you done a podcast with Chris?
Not yet. I've asked him a couple times. He just hasn't given me an actual date that we're going to do it yet. So.
Well, when you do it, have him do some impressions for you.
I definitely will. That would be very cool. I love that. I will get him on. It's going to happen. He's just being difficult about it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I have one final question for you.
Yeah.
So Conduit E Magazine is doing the Farag's curls versus Stasik's stash presidential campaign. So if your curls win, what will be at the top of the agenda when you get into office?
Top of my agenda?
Yes.
Top of my agenda is going to be, we're going to take all the major sports, right?
Okay.
Take all the major sports, and for each overly paid athlete that gets paid over a certain amount of money, there's like this tax. All this money that's being made goes to frontline first responders, firefighters, all those people. Nurses make good money, but people are just extremely underpaid.
Absolutely.
Athletes are just, as much as I love sports, and don't get me wrong, I watch a lot of sports, I just feel like they're overpaid. So that would be first on my agenda.
I love it. I feel the same way. We need to be pouring funds into the people that, when the world is crumbling, we need those people,
Right.
I love that. That's great. That's a good agenda to have. And I feel like that's going to help push some voters to your side.
Ryan Stasek's response.
I'm going to have to reach out to him today now and get him on here to do one. He'll definitely give me something.
I'm sure he will.
This is great. All right. Well, that's everything I have. Thank you so much for your time. This was really, really wonderful talking to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a really awesome day.
You too.
Take care.
All right, bye.
Bye.